ISS stands for in-school suspension, and of course, in-school suspension is a disciplinary tool that's used by the school system to deal with... Wait a minute. Oh, see, that's gonna be my bad, because I had the wrong notes up, and I had the wrong notes pulled up for my review. So, you're probably here to talk about I.S.S. the movie. This is embarrassing for both of us, really. All right, let's just roll from the top. ISS stands for the International Space Station, and it's not only the name of our movie, but it is the destination of our movie. And as soon as I heard there was a movie coming out that was set solely in space, I got excited, because I, for one, love watching space on the big screen. That is why if there's a movie regarding space, in space, I will watch it in theaters 100 times out of 100 if I'm given the chance, because I love watching movies that take place in space. There's just something vast, something mysterious, and something horrifying about being in space. And of course, the tagline for this movie is "In space, they can hear you scream," so a little play on the Alien movie right there. But with that said, the International Space Station is a movie that is about 3 American astronauts and 3 Russian cosmonauts all living on the International Space Station. And there's something that sets the tone for this entire movie that's said right at the very beginning of this movie, and that is that when you see Earth from the International Space Station, you see a world without borders. And it sort of sets the tone, like, all of the people on this ship sort of believe, like, hey, wouldn't Earth be a better place if there were no borders, if we could all just get along together? And they're like, we live in perfect harmony up here. The Russians and the Americans, couldn't they just live like that down there? Wouldn't that be nice? But then nuclear war breaks out on Earth, and both teams get messages from their respective governments telling them to take control of the ISS by any means necessary. So now where you started with perfect harmony, you have people at each other's throats trying to take over the International Space Station for their respective governments. And if that sounds like an interesting concept to you, that movie is playing in theaters right now, and I highly recommend that you check this thing out if you like watching space on the big screen. With that said, let's get into my positives and some of my negatives. First positive for this movie, of course, I already talked about a little bit. I love seeing space in a movie theater on a big screen. To me, that was worth the cost of admission, just getting to see space on the big screen. Now, they don't go as far with space as I would have liked them to, and that's something we'll touch on here in a little bit, but I do think that getting to see space, getting to see the Earth from space is just a cool view. And so when you put that into a movie, again, I'm just automatically going to put it in my positive column. I liked that about the movie. It was a fun, enjoyable aspect for me. I also really enjoyed the tension in this movie because, of course, I've talked about the synopsis. You've got these 3 people who are living in harmony, all of a sudden told, hey, those are the enemy, take them out. And so now you've got tension. And this movie does a great job building tension. For the entire runtime of the movie, I was like, what are they gonna do? I was toward the edge of my seat. The movie did a great job keeping it tense, keeping you at the edge of your seat. That, unfortunately, is where my positives end and where my negatives begin, because while I enjoyed the space aspect of this movie, I don't feel like they utilized it to its full potential. And I'm not asking for an all-out space battle, but one astronaut leaves the ISS for a brief period during this movie, and while that one astronaut is out there, I was like, all right, this is what I came for. I want to see space as the background, but there's just not enough of that, and I don't know if either the movie didn't call for it, or they didn't have the budget for it, or a little bit of both, but I would have liked to see more space in this movie, and I didn't feel like I got enough. And while I said this movie is tense, and it is very tense throughout, for whatever reason, it doesn't feel claustrophobic. It doesn't feel like, oh, I don't have anywhere to run. Because while they're on this International Space Station, there seems like enough places to hide. There seems like enough places to get away. A lot of the time of this movie, the characters have alone time with each other in their respective portions of the spaceship while they're talking, and it just doesn't feel that claustrophobic feel. Like Alien feels like a claustrophobic feel, even though they're on this massive ship. There's not really time for them to be alone. But in this movie, on the small-ish International Space Station, there's still time for them to be alone. So while it is tense, while you are at the edge of your seat wondering what are they going to do to each other, it doesn't feel claustrophobic, and that's what I wanted this movie to feel like. So for me, the claustrophobia just wasn't there. My final negative for this movie is going to be the narrative overall. It just didn't connect with me personally. I thought that the friendships that were set up by the characters in the beginning of this movie were done pretty well, but then the movie says, okay, so all of you believe in open borders. You look at the Earth and say, doesn't it look so much better if you don't see it as borders? Okay, wouldn't the world be be better. Like, that's a narrative it's trying to push. But then the movie flips that on its head and it says, okay, so what would you do in this situation where both your governments are telling you to kill the other one and take over the ship no matter what? How are you going to respond to this? And it's an interesting question to ask. I just don't think it's answered very well in this movie, because you have some people that go from this friendship and they love each other to let's kill them, and then you have other people on the other side of the ship that are just like, I don't know if we should kill, okay, let's kill them. Like, it doesn't answer the question very well, or it answers it in a horrific way, depending on how you look at it. And I don't know if that movie worked for me. It's just a personal thing for me that it just didn't work for me. But I've seen other people praise this movie. I've seen people say, like, oh, it looks at humanity and what we would do with each other. And so I could see people taking away either perspective from this movie. But for me, the perspective I get from this movie is you asked a very good question about what would you do put in that situation, but you didn't really execute in a way that was satisfying for me. The movie is very much so tiptoeing on either side of the balance, and then by the end of the movie you're just kind of like, oh, okay, so you're not really going to answer the question. And that is probably what bothered me when I left this movie, why it felt like a bit of a dud, because it doesn't commit to one side or the other. It just says, okay, here's what we're proposing to you as the viewer, here's what the characters are going to do, and then the characters are going to kind of ride that line in the middle all the way to the end credits. And that was disappointing. So with that said though, guys, is this a movie I would recommend? Well, if you're a fan of space movies, then I would recommend you check this out on the biggest screen possible. If you're a fan of tense movies where characters have to make hard decisions with each other, you might enjoy this. It might be a movie for you on streaming. But overall, for me, it's a one watch. It's not a movie I would go back to too many times. But those are just my opinions, because that's my review for I.S.S. Guys, have you had the chance to see I.S.S. yet? If you have, let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what worked for you, what didn't work for you. Maybe you agree or disagree with me. Remember, I love hearing your comments, so let me know what you think about this movie. But if you liked what you watched here and you want to watch more, don't forget to hit the like button, because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Alright guys, we got to the end of my I.S.S. movie review, and I had a good time doing this review. I just wish I had a better time watching the movie. Unfortunately, I feel like Interstellar really set the bar for me for space movies in a theater, and it's hard for anything to match that. Interstellar is just a beautiful movie. But with that said though, guys, if you like this review and you want to watch more, well, I've got all of my 2023 reviews right there, and I've got all of my 2024 reviews right there.